The night was quiet. Too quiet. A cold wind moved slowly across an empty land. No city lights. No traffic sound. Only darkness and silence. In the middle of this silence, a single building stood far away from everything. It looked calm from the outside. But inside, something was very wrong. Inside the factory, phones were ringing. A man stood still, holding a phone in his hand. His face was tense. Sweat slowly moved down his forehead. Around him, engineers stopped working. Machines were silent. Everyone was waiting. This was not a normal call. This was a desperate call. The voice on the other side was shaking. The message was short and clear. There is a problem. A very big problem. For a moment, no one spoke. Everyone understood what this meant. One mistake here could destroy months of work. One mistake could end a dream that billions of dollars were trying to build. This factory was not like any other factory in America. It did not build cars. It did not build phones. It was building something far more dangerous. It was building rockets. Huge rockets. Tall rockets. Rockets that were meant to leave Earth. This was the largest rocket production line in the country. Maybe in the world. And tonight, it was facing a moment that could change everything. Far away from the factory floor, news of the problem reached one man. He was not inside the building, but everything inside depended on him. Elon Musk received the call. He had taken many calls before. Calls about money problems. Calls about failed tests. Calls about broken parts. But this call was different. This call carried fear. For years, he had pushed his teams beyond limits. Faster builds. Bigger rockets. More risks. Many people said it was impossible. Many said it was madness. But he believed speed was the key. Now, speed was becoming the danger. The factory was built in a place where mistakes would hurt fewer people. No cities nearby. No homes close. This was done on purpose. Rockets are not safe. They explode. They fail. And when they do, they destroy everything around them. Inside the factory, workers stood near massive metal sections. Some parts were taller than buildings. Some were wider than roads. These were not small machines. These were flying towers. Every bolt mattered. Every weld mattered. The call was about a small detail. A tiny part. Something most people would never notice. But in rockets, small things can cause big disasters. An engineer stepped forward and spoke softly. If this fails during launch, the rocket will not survive. The room felt colder. The factory had one mission: build rockets faster than anyone ever had. Old space companies took years to build one rocket. This factory wanted to do it in months. Sometimes weeks. That speed made history possible. But it also made mistakes possible. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Inside, fear grew faster. This factory was part of a new idea. Rockets should not be built one by one like art. They should be built like cars. On a production line. Moving forward step by step. This idea had never been tested at this scale. Now, the test had arrived. The problem was deep inside the rocket structure. Fixing it would mean stopping the entire line. Delays, lost money, lost time. But ignoring it could mean something. Worse. Explosion, fire, failure. The workers knew this was not just about one rocket. This rocket was special. It was designed to be reused. To land back on Earth. To fly again. This was the future of space travel. And the future was shaking. The call ended. Silence returned. But it was no longer calm silence. It was heavy. Dangerous. Someone whispered, "What if we are too late?" No one answered. The factory lights stayed on. Machines waited. Time slowed down. This factory had already seen failure before. Rockets had exploded in tests. Fireballs had filled the sky. Critics had laughed. Headlines had declared the end, but each failure had pushed them forward. This time felt different. This time, the risk was higher, because this rocket was bigger than anything they had built before. It was designed to carry humans. Humans to the moon. Humans to Mars. One wrong decision here could delay humanity's future in space. The man on the phone took a deep breath. He knew what had to be done. Risk everything, or stop everything. The factory was built for speed. But now speed was the enemy. Outside, the night continued as if nothing was happening. Stars shined calmly above. They had seen this before. Human ambition. Human mistakes. Inside the factory, a decision was coming. A decision that would decide if this rocket would fly or never leave the ground. The workers looked at each other. Some were tired. Some were scared. Some were excited. They all knew one thing. They were standing inside history. And history does not wait. The desperate call had started a chain reaction. Meetings would follow. Arguments, calculations, long nights without sleep. This was only the beginning. Because building the largest rocket factory in America was never supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be impossible, and impossible things always come with desperate moments. As the camera slowly moves away from the factory, the narrator speaks softly. This is not just a story about metal and machines. This is a story about pressure, about risk, and about how one phone call can decide the future of space. The screen fades to black. The factory did not sleep. Lights stayed on through the night. Machines stood ready, but no one touched them. The massive rocket body stood in the center of the building like a silent giant. It did not move. It did not speak. But it felt alive. Everyone knew one thing. If this giant failed, it would fail loudly. Engineers walked slowly around the rocket. Their footsteps echoed on the metal floor. No one joked. No one smiled. This was not a normal workday. This rocket was not finished. But it was already dangerous. Inside the factory walls, pressure was building. Not air pressure. Human pressure. Mental pressure. Months of work were locked inside this machine. One engineer stopped near the rocket and looked up. His neck hurt from staring so high. He whispered to himself, "This thing is taller than most buildings." This was not just a rocket. This was a test of belief. For years, traditional space companies said rockets must be built slowly, carefully, one piece at a time. Every step approved again and again. But this factory believed something different. Build fast. Test fast. Fail fast. Learn fast. That belief made history possible. But now, it was pushing everyone to the edge. The problem discovered in Part 1 was still there. Hidden. Quiet. Waiting. A tiny section deep inside the rocket structure showed signs of weakness. It was not broken yet. But during flight, pressure would increase. Heat would rise. Metal would expand. That small weakness could become a nightmare. The engineers argued quietly. If we stop now, we lose weeks. If we continue, we risk everything. There was no easy answer. Far away, the man who started this vision listened carefully. Elon Musk was known for making hard choices. He pushed limits. He ignored fear. But he also understood physics did not care about dreams. Rockets do not forgive mistakes. Inside the factory, the production line was designed like a river. Parts move forward. They never go backward. Stopping the line was against the system. Stopping meant admitting the system was not perfect. And this system was built to change the world. Workers stood near giant metal rings. These rings would become the rocket's body. Each ring was welded with extreme heat. Sparks flew like fireworks when machines worked. But tonight, there were no sparks, only waiting. Outside the building, security lights cut through the darkness. A factory was built far away for a reason. If something went wrong, no city would suffer. Still, everyone inside knew danger, did not care about distance. An engineer checked data on a screen. Numbers moved. Graphs changed. Red lines appeared. He swallowed hard. "This is not safe," he said softly. Another engineer replied. "Nothing about rockets is safe." Silence returned. This rocket was designed to do something no rocket had done before. It was designed to come back, to land, to fly again. That meant stronger structure, more stress, more pressure. Every decision inside this factory was multiplied by risk. Time passed slowly. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a voice broke the silence. "We test." All eyes turned. Testing was dangerous. But testing was truth. If they tested the weak section, they would know. The test could damage the rocket. Or it could prove it was strong enough. There was no middle ground. Testing began. Machines powered on. Deep sounds filled the factory. Low, heavy, powerful sounds. The kind that make your chest vibrate. The silent giant was waking up. Sensors were activated. Pressure slowly increased. Data flowed into screens. Engineers watched closely. No one blinked. The rocket did not move. The metal held. Pressure increased again. A loud cracking sound echoed. Everyone froze. Hearts raced. Was that failure? Seconds felt endless. Then another engineer shouted, "Hold on." That sound was external, not structural. Breaths were released, but relief did not last long. Numbers on the screen changed again. A small warning appeared. Yellow, not red. But yellow was still danger. The test stopped. The factory went quiet again. The rocket stood unchanged. But the message was clear. This was close. Too close. The factory was pushing limits that had never been pushed before. Bigger rockets meant bigger risks. Faster production meant smaller margins for error. This was the cost of ambition. Outside, the sun slowly began to rise. Morning light touched the factory walls. A new day started, but the problem remained. Workers looked tired. Some had been awake all night. Coffee cups were empty. Eyes were red, but no one left. They knew something important was happening. This factory was not just building rockets. It was rewriting the rules of space. And rewriting rules always creates chaos. The narrator speaks as the camera moves slowly across the massive building. When humans try to move faster than history allows, something always pushes back. Inside the factory, the silent giant waited. It did not care about deadlines. It did not care about money. It only cared about physics. And physics always wins. A decision had to be made soon. Fix the problem and slow down. Or ignore the warning and move forward. The future of this rocket, this factory, and perhaps human space travel depended on it. And the clock was still ticking. The production line started moving again. Slow at first. Almost careful. Metal sections rolled forward on heavy platforms. Chains moved. Motors hummed. The factory was alive once more. But something had changed. Before, the line moved with confidence. Now it moved with fear. This factory was designed with one rule: never stop. Every stop cost money. Every stop killed speed. And speed was the heart of this operation. The idea was simple. If rockets could be built like cars, space would become cheaper, faster, normal. But rockets are not cars. They burn, they explode. They punish mistakes. Inside the building, workers returned to their positions. Helmets on, gloves tight, eyes focused. But minds were elsewhere. Everyone remembered the warning. Everyone remembered the sound. The silent crack that almost ended everything. The rocket sections moved to the next station. Huge metal rings were stacked, aligned, and prepared for welding. Robotic arms lowered themselves into position like mechanical beasts. Sparks exploded into the air. Light filled the factory. The line did not care about doubt. It only knew forward. Engineers watched from above on metal walkways. Screens showed pressure numbers, heat levels, and stress points. Every number mattered now. One engineer leaned toward another and whispered, "We are moving too fast." The other replied quietly, "We always move too fast." That was the problem. This factory was built on speed. It was its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. Far from the noise, a meeting was happening behind closed doors. Voices were low but sharp. The question was simple. Do they slow down the line? Slowing down meant rewriting the system, admitting the process was wrong, changing the culture. And culture was hard to change. Elon Musk had built this place to break old rules. He believed waiting was the enemy. That perfection came from repetition, not delay. But repetition only works if the base is strong. The rocket moving through the line was not just metal. It carried dreams, contracts, human lives, and pressure. So much pressure. Back on the factory floor, a worker noticed something strange. A weld looked different. Slightly darker. Slightly uneven. He stopped. Stopping was not normal. The line slowed. A supervisor rushed over. "What's wrong?" he asked. The worker pointed. "It doesn't look right." The supervisor hesitated. Cameras watched everything. Every delay was recorded. Every delay had consequences. He looked again. The weld was within limits. Barely. "Keep moving," he said. The line moved on. But doubt stayed behind. This factory had created a new kind of pressure. Not just physical pressure inside the rocket, but pressure inside people. Workers felt it. Engineers felt it. Managers felt it. If something failed, fingers would point. The rocket sections reached the engine installation area. This was the heart of the machine. Engines that could shake the ground. Engines that could lift thousands of tons into the sky. Installing them required perfection. A single mistake here would be unforgivable. The engines were lowered slowly, carefully. Everyone held their breath. Metal met metal. Bolts tightened. Sensors activated. So far, everything looked fine. Too fine. An engineer stared at his screen. His eyes narrowed. "This reading is delayed," he said. Another replied, "Probably sensor lag." "Or stress buildup," the first said. Silence. They recalibrated. Numbers updated. The delay disappeared. But no one smiled. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Heat pressed against the factory walls. Inside, temperatures rose. Machines ran hotter. Metal expanded. The earlier warning came back into focus. Heat plus pressure equals danger. The production line was now moving at full speed. The giant rocket was taking shape faster than ever before. From a distance, it looked beautiful, powerful, perfect, but beauty can hide weakness. A sudden alarm beeped, short, sharp, yellow again. The line slowed automatically. Everyone froze. Engineers rushed to screens. Data flowed fast. Numbers jumped. "What is it?" someone asked. "Stress spike," came the answer. "Where?" "Near the same section." The room went quiet. This was no coincidence. The silent giant was speaking, and it was not happy. A decision was made quickly. Too quickly. Override the alert. The line resumed. Why? Because stopping now would mean admitting the earlier test was right. And no one was ready for that. The factory pushed forward. Minutes passed. Nothing exploded. Nothing broke. Relief spread slowly. Maybe it was fine. Maybe they worried too much. That is how disasters begin. As night approached again, workers changed shifts. New faces. Same pressure. The line did not care who was tired. The rocket stood taller now. More complete. More dangerous. One engineer stayed behind after his shift. He stood alone, staring up at the massive structure. He felt small. This thing will either make history, he said quietly, or teach us a very hard lesson. Above the factory, clouds moved slowly. The stars waited again. Inside, the line continued. Because stopping was never part of the plan. The narrator's voice fades in. When speed becomes a belief, slowing down feels like failure. But sometimes, slowing down is survival. The camera pulls back. The giant rocket moves forward. And the warning remains ignored. To be continued? Continue next part more unique. Perfect. Here is part 4, even more unique. Slower but heavier. Psychological tension. Third-person documentary style. Simple basic English. This part focuses on human fear versus machine power. A new angle, so audience does not feel repetition. Part 4. When metal starts to breathe, the rocket was no longer just metal. That is what the engineers felt. As the structure grew taller, sounds inside the factory changed. Metal clicked. Steel stretched. Pipes whispered under pressure. It felt like the rocket was breathing, slow, heavy, alive. This was normal. And also dangerous. Large machines change shape when heat rises. Rockets are built to handle this. But this rocket was bigger than anything built before. Bigger size meant bigger movement. Tiny movement could mean disaster. Inside the control room, engineers watched live data. Lines moved on screens like heartbeats. Green meant safe. Yellow meant warning. Red meant stop. No red yet. But yellow was becoming familiar. Too familiar. One engineer rubbed his eyes. He had not slept properly in 2 days. Coffee no longer helped. His brain felt slow, but the data was fast. Why is this section expanding more than expected? He asked. Another replied, it's within range. But the range keeps changing, the first said. That was the truth. The rocket was teaching them something new. Old rules did not fully apply anymore. This factory was not just producing rockets. It was learning in real time. And learning under pressure is never safe. On the factory floor, a loud, deep sound echoed. Not an alarm. Not a crack. A groan. Metal under stress. Workers stopped moving. Some looked up. Some stepped back without thinking. The sound passed. Nothing broke. But fear stayed. A supervisor walked fast across the floor. He tried to look calm. Leaders always try to look calm. Everything is fine, he said. Back to work. People obeyed. But trust was cracking. This rocket was designed to go beyond Earth, beyond safety, beyond comfort. It was designed to survive fire, pressure, and vacuum. But right now, it was testing the humans around it. In a quiet room away from the noise, decisions were being discussed again. Numbers, timelines, costs. Stopping now would delay everything. Launching late would mean public failure. Competitors were watching. Governments were watching. The world was watching. Speed had become reputation. And reputation is hard to slow down. Elon Musk believed pressure created progress. He had seen it work before. Many times. But this rocket was different. This rocket was not forgiving. Back on the floor, welding continued. Bright light filled the air. Sparks fell like rain. Robots moved with perfect rhythm. Machines did not feel fear. Humans did. A young technician stood near the base of the rocket. This was his first major project. He had dreamed of working here since childhood. Now his hands were shaking. He noticed something small. A vibration. Not strong. Just enough to feel through his boots. He placed his hand on the metal. It was warm. Too warm. He stepped back. "Is that normal?" he asked. A senior engineer looked. He paused. "Yes," he said after a moment. "It's normal." But his voice was not strong. Heat builds. Pressure builds. And inside rockets, there is no room for comfort. The production line slowed slightly. Not by command. By caution. People moved carefully now. Every sound felt louder. A warning light blinked again. Yellow. Someone laughed nervously. That light is always on now. No one laughed with him. This factory had reached a new phase. Not building. Not testing. Waiting for something to break. And that waiting was worse than failure. The rocket stood fully upright now. A metal tower reaching toward the ceiling. Workers looked tiny at its base. Some felt proud. Some felt afraid. Most felt both. Outside, dark clouds gathered. Wind pushed against the walls. Nature did not care about schedules. Inside, tension thickened. An engineer stared at the rocket and said quietly, "This thing doesn't want to be rushed." No one replied, because everyone felt the same. The line stopped again. Not fully, just enough. Meetings happened fast now. Decisions were shorter. Voices sharper. Time was running out. One choice stood above all others. Proceed. Or pause and redesign. Proceed meant risk. Pause meant delay. Both had consequences. The rocket did not care. It waited. The narrator's voice returns. Calm but heavy. Machines follow laws. Humans follow deadlines. And when these two collide, something must give. The camera moves slowly around the towering rocket. Lights reflect off its curved surface. It looks powerful, beautiful. And dangerous. This factory was built to change the future. But before the future could be reached, a hard truth was coming. You cannot force metal to obey ambition. The question was no longer if something would happen. The question was when. And when it did. Everyone would feel it. The factory reached a point where silence was no longer calm. It was heavy. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. The rocket stood complete in its main structure. From bottom to top, it looked ready. Strong. Finished. Anyone seeing it for the first time would think success was guaranteed. But the people inside knew better. They had learned something important. Over the last few days, the rocket was not broken. But it was not comfortable. And rockets do not need comfort. They need certainty. Inside a small meeting room, screens showed live data. Pressure curves. Heat maps, stress lines. All moving slowly, like a warning that refused to shout. Engineers sat close together. No phones, no jokes. Just faces lit by blue screens. One engineer finally spoke. "We are at the edge." No one asked what he meant. Everyone understood. The factory had pushed as far as it could without crossing a line. And now that line was visible. Thin, sharp. Cross it. And everything might fail. Another engineer leaned forward. "If we move forward from here, we are guessing." Guessing was not part of engineering. Guessing was gambling. The problem was not just technical anymore. It was human. This factory was built on confidence. On belief that speed could defeat caution. That bold moves could replace slow thinking. That belief had worked before. But now, the machine was asking a question. Are you sure? Outside the meeting room, workers waited. They pretended to work. They checked tools that did not need checking. They looked at the rocket again and again. They felt the tension without, understanding every detail. Humans are good at sensing danger. Someone whispered, "Why is everyone so quiet?" No one answered. In another room, a call was taking place. Short sentences. Clear words. No drama. Elon Musk listened. He had built companies by pushing through doubt. He had ignored experts before. Sometimes they were wrong. Sometimes fear slowed progress. But physics was never wrong. He asked one question. If we stop now, what do we lose? An engineer answered honestly. Time, money, momentum. And if we don't? He asked. A pause. Everything. That was the difference. The rocket was not just hardware anymore. It was a responsibility. Humans would one day sit on top of machines like this. That changed the equation. Back on the factory floor, a strange thing happened. The rocket made a sound again. Not loud. Not sharp. A deep, slow creak, like a tree in the wind. Every head turned. The sound stopped. No alarms. No flashing lights. But everyone felt it. This was the machine reminding them who was in control. A senior engineer walked slowly to the center of the floor. His voice was calm but firm. We are pausing. Some workers exhaled. Some looked shocked. Pausing meant the line would stop. The rule would be broken. The system would admit weakness, but the line stopped anyway. Motors shut down. Robots froze in place. Sparks faded. The factory went quiet for the first time in days. It felt strange, almost wrong, but also safe. The decision traveled fast through the building. Phones buzzed. Messages spread. Some people were relieved. Others were angry. Speed was the identity of this place. And identity does not like to change. An engineer stared at the rocket and said softly, "It's like it told us to stop." That sounded foolish and also true. Teams began reviewing everything again. Measurements, designs, assumptions made months ago. Ideas that worked on smaller rockets, but might not work here. This was the cost of doing something first. There was no map. Only learning. Hours passed. Then more hours. Night returned. The factory lights stayed on, but no machines moved. People talked more now. Real conversations. Honest ones. We pushed too hard. We learned something important. This rocket is teaching us. Teaching is painful, but valuable. The rocket stood silently, as if watching. Waiting. Outside. Rain started to fall. Soft at first, then heavier. The sound hit the metal roof gently. It felt fitting. Nature always reminds humans of limits. Inside. The decision settled. This was not failure. This was adjustment. The narrator's voice enters, slow and steady. History remembers success. But success is built on moments when humans choose to listen instead of rush. The factory would move again. The line would restart. The rocket would fly. But not today. Today was about survival. And survival is the first step toward the future. The camera pulls back from the massive building, rain falling around it. The rocket remains inside, unfinished but alive. A final line appears on screen. Sometimes, stopping is the bravest move. Stopping the line did not end the danger. It changed it. The factory was quiet, but the pressure moved into people's minds. Machines can be paused. Thoughts cannot. Morning arrived slowly. Pale light entered through high windows. The rocket stood still, tall and silent, like it was judging everyone around it. Workers returned, but the energy was different. Now. No rush. No noise. No confidence. Only focus. Stopping the line had saved them from one risk, but it created another. Time. Every hour lost here mattered. Schedules were already tight. Expectations were already high. And the world outside did not pause with them. Inside a long hallway, engineers walked with laptops and papers. Meetings started early. No small talk. Just data. The rocket had spoken. Now they had to listen. They opened old designs. Early calculations. Assumptions made when the rocket was still an idea on a screen. That was the problem. This rocket was no longer an idea. It was real. Reality was heavier than theory. One engineer pointed at a diagram. This was fine on smaller rockets, he said. But scale changes everything. Scale was the enemy. As rockets grow larger, forces grow faster than size. Heat spreads differently. Stress behaves strangely. Small errors become huge. This factory was learning that lesson the hard way. On the factory floor, technicians began slow inspections. Not with machines. With eyes, hands, patience. They tapped metal. Measured gaps. Checked welds again and again. No one wanted surprises now. Worker stopped near the same section that caused the first whirring. He ran his hand along the surface. It felt solid, but looks had lied before. Inside a glass room above the floor, leaders watched quietly. Screens showed updated simulations. New models. Slower timelines. Someone asked the question no one wanted to hear. How bad is it? The answer came carefully. We don't know yet. That was worse than bad news. Not knowing means uncertainty. And uncertainty is dangerous in engineering. Another engineer spoke. If we change this section, it affects everything above it. That meant redesign. Redesign meant rebuilding. Rebuilding meant delay. Silence followed. Far from the noise. One person considered the bigger picture. Elon Musk had always believed progress demanded discomfort. That stopping did not mean surrender. It meant choosing a better path. But even he knew something important. Public failure is loud. Silent failure is deadly. Back on the floor, workers waited for instructions. Some feared layoffs. Some feared blame. Some feared the rocket itself. The factory had changed their mood. It no longer felt like a place of speed. It felt like a place of judgment. Then, something unexpected happened. An engineer smiled. Not a big smile. A small one. This is good, he said. Others looked at him like he was crazy. How? Someone asked. Because now we know, he replied. Before, we were guessing. That changed everything. The factory shifted again. Not back to speed, but forward into clarity. Teams broke into smaller groups. One focused on structure. One on heat. One on pressure. One on human safety. For the first time in days, people felt useful instead of afraid. The rocket was no longer an enemy. It was a teacher. Hours passed. Data improved. Models became cleaner. Solutions appeared slowly. Not perfect, but possible. One section would need reinforcement. Another would need redesign. Weight would increase. Balance would change. Nothing was simple, but it was real. Outside, news rumors started to spread. People noticed delays. Cameras waited beyond fences. Questions were coming. Inside, no one cared. They were past pride now. This was about survival. Late at night, a technician stood alone again near the rocket. He looked up and felt something new. Respect. Not fear. Respect. This thing almost broke us, he whispered. But it didn't. The rocket stood still. Unmoving. Stillness. Progress was happening. The narrator speaks softly as the camera circles the massive structure. Stopping is not the end of momentum. Sometimes it is the moment momentum becomes direction. The factory would not return to its old speed. It would return smarter, stronger, slower. If needed, the rocket would fly one day. Not because it was rushed, but because it was understood. As the lights dim for the night, one truth becomes clear. The most dangerous moment was not when the line stopped. It was when they almost ignored the warning. And next time, the warning might not whisper. The factory felt different now. Not slower, not faster. Clearer. The noise was back, but it was controlled. Machines moved with purpose. People spoke less, but listened more. The rocket still stood tall, but it no longer felt angry. It felt understood. Engineers worked with new designs. Stronger sections. Better balance. More room for heat and pressure. Every change came with cost, but also confidence. This was no longer about proving speed. This was about proving meaning. Someone asked a simple question during a late-night meeting. Why are we doing this? The room went quiet. Everyone knew the answer, but no one had said it out loud. In a long time, they were not building a rocket just to launch metal into space. They were building a path for the moon, for Mars, for humans too. Leave Earth safely. This factory existed because one belief refused to die. Elon Musk believed Earth should not be the only home for humanity. That belief shaped every wall, every machine, every long night inside this building. This rocket was not designed for one flight. It was designed to fly again. And again. And again. That changed everything. Reusable rockets mean cheaper space travel. More launches. More learning. More chances to explore. But reuse also means higher stress. Higher risk. Zero room for weak design. The earlier warning was proof. This rocket demanded respect. On the factory floor, new metal sections arrived, reinforced, tested, heavier, safer. Workers guided them carefully into place. The line moved again, not rushed. Confident. A technician watched the process and said quietly, "It feels different now." Another nodded. "Because now we know why we stopped." Outside the factory, the world continued. People argued online. Some called the delays failure. Some doubted the vision. Inside, none of that mattered. Because rockets do not answer to opinions. They answer to physics. And physics was finally on their side. The rocket grew stronger, day by day. Sensors showed calmer readings. Stress levels stayed stable. Heat spread evenly. Green lights stayed green. For the first time in weeks. No yellow. Relief spread quietly. Not celebration. Respect. Late one night, an engineer stood near a window, looking at the stars. He imagined this rocket rising. Fire below. Silence above. People think space is about technology, he said. But it's really about patience. The factory had learned that lesson. This rocket would carry more than fuel and engines. It would carry trust. Trust from engineers. Trust from workers. Trust from future astronauts. Every bolt tightened now carried that weight. The narrator's voice returns, steady and calm. Big dreams do not fail because they are impossible. They fail when humans forget why they started. Inside this factory, the reason was clear again. Not speed. Not headlines. Not pride. The future. The rocket was almost ready now. Not perfect, but ready enough. And readiness. In space is everything. As the camera pulls back, the massive factory glows under night lights. The rocket stands tall inside, stronger than before. A final line appears on screen. The hardest journeys begin long before launch. The rocket stood ready, not rushed, not forced. Ready. Inside the factory, the feeling was quiet confidence. Not excitement, not fear. Something deeper. Trust. Every section had been checked again. Every weld tested. Every system questioned. The rocket that once whispered warnings now stood calm and steady. It no longer fought the factory. It belonged to it. Workers moved carefully around the base. No wasted motion. No shouting. Just focus. Everyone knew their role. This was not just another build. This was proof. Proof that listening mattered. Proof that slowing down could move things forward. Proof that even the biggest machines must be respected. The production line was running smoothly now. The system had changed. Not in speed, but in mindset. This factory was no longer racing time. It was working with it. High above the floor, engineers watched final data streams. Lines stayed stable. Numbers behaved. Green lights held their place. Someone smiled. No one celebrated. Space does not reward celebration before success. Outside the factory walls, the world waited. Cameras, critics, supporters, doubters. Everyone wanted a result. But inside, something more important had already happened. The factory had grown up. Elon Musk once said that making life multiplanetary was not a choice, but a responsibility. That belief lived inside this building. Not as words, not as work, not as mistakes, not as lessons learned, the hard way. This rocket was not perfect. No rocket ever is. But it was honest. Built with understanding, not ego. That made all the difference. A technician placed his hand on the metal one last time before stepping away. It felt cool, solid, ready. We did it right this time, he said quietly. The rocket would soon leave this place. It would roll out under open sky. It would feel sunlight for the first time. Then fire. Then silence. Then space. But even before launch, this moment mattered. Because the hardest part was already over. Not the engineering. Not the testing. The listening. The narrator's voice comes in, slow and powerful. This factory did not just build a rocket. It built patience. It built discipline. It built the future one hard decision at a time. The camera pulls back slowly. The massive factory glows against the dark land. Inside, the rocket stands tall, no longer a silent giant, but a ready one. A machine shaped by human limits. A dream, shaped by reality. The screen fades to black. Final words appear. The future does not belong to the fastest. It belongs to those who learn. End.